Okay, so we have started, we have looked at zoom in and out using your scrolling. We have looked at zoom in and out using this button, panning using this hand icon. And if the object is so far away, you can select it using the left mouse and go to view frame selected, or you can use the full stop button. But the full stop button in this case is bringing up the flyout menu, which brings up more options for you. But among these options, we don't want any of these. The 3D cursor is this small, this small one that you see. This first zoom in, you'll see it better. So if you use view and you go to frame selected, zoom out using the scroll mouse. This is the 3D cursor, this one. It helps you do other things, but you're not going to look at it in this video. So another option is to look down here. You see down below there are some options. There are some keys. They show you what it will do if you select. They show you what these keys are doing. Now, if the object is selected and you bring the mouse to maybe up here, if you go back down here, it will change. It will show you that it's going to pan, or it's going to, if you use the left mouse button, it's going to box select. Also, box selecting might be like this. That's box selecting if you have multiple objects and you want to select them. Okay, so this one is handy to show you some of the buttons, what they will do. So to move on here, selection and the move. This one is the move, this one is the selection. So these are other selection options like the lasso tool. We looked at that in Photoshop. It acts like a bit similar to that thing in Photoshop. So the move, if you select this, you can be able to, if I zoom out and also rotate a bit, you can use these directions like this to move the object. I use Ctrl Z to undo that move. Is move on the X, Y, and Z. So rotation, same to rotate the object right there, and scale. So scale simply like that. On the X only, on the Z only, and also on the Y only, like so. Right. So what about this one? This one is like the world tool to do all the stuff at once. So if it's for scaling, to zoom, to scale everything at once. And the pencil tool, this one's like, well, they can even draw on objects. This objects, this tool here, you can like draw on objects. Okay, and you can now it's not attached to the object, because you need to do some adjustments, but those adjustments we look at in the later lesson. All right, so this one for measuring. So we are done with this side of the tools. We are done with the timeline. Now I've also showed you some of this stuff. Now there's this button here called the wireframing. So in case you have other objects that are behind this object, this tool will help you to select them. And then you have other modes, the two shading modes. Okay. So in Blender, the good thing is for every task that you are doing, we have these workspaces. For example, the first one is the layout, but there is the modeling workspace, which gives you a few more tools to work with when you are modeling your object. For example, if you want to create loop cuts, if I select everything, if you want to make loop cuts, if you want to make the bevels, if you want to select different faces for the object right here. Okay, if you want to watch this extruding and other ways of extruding, so all these editing tools in this editing mode or editing layout, or you can call it a workspace. So another workspace for sculpting, mostly if you are doing like those models, like what models, like those Godzillas, you are modeling Godzillas and all that stuff. This is where you go for sculpting. Okay. So we are going to look at this first look, see, these are all the tools that we can use on your modeling stuff. Yeah, we might not model, we are going to do mostly animation, but that's the sculpting part. And the UV ink, I think you already know this one. If you want to apply texture to an object, you have to break it down into UVs. So UVs will just be the faces that have been unwrapped. Okay. Okay, so I was talking about UVs. I think you already know UVs. If you want to edit this object, you break it down into faces and you apply textures on each face. So this is the texture paint. If you just want to apply textures by painting them instead of bringing in like a photo which you already have and putting it on your body. So the shading will be included using nodes. You can mix up, you can add nodes together to get your kind of texture that you are looking for. If you know Python, this is where you can use your Python language, your Python knowledge to create nodes for textures and all that good stuff. Yeah, under the shading workspace. Animation workspace, I think this is like the, by the way, there's something I've not shown you. This small button here can help you to change the views in whatever view you want. For example, you can change this into a dope sheet. The dope sheet is the one that we can use to edit the keyframes. For example, if I have this one and I go to this button, which is auto keying. Now, auto keying, I'm going to start from zero, and this object, I want to rotate it. So if I select it and let's do something like, if I use letter R for rotation and I rotate it like that, you see these keyframes have been created because I selected the auto keying. Okay, so I have keyframes there. Keyframes, I move forward to 59 frames, and I maybe select this object, I grab it using letter G, and then I can use maybe X, or to move it on the X. I can use Y to move it on the Y. Just click, just tapping on letter Y. Okay, and then I can move it like there. So I also have keyframes here. So if I move in through, you can see that I have this object like this, and I can decide to apply some rotation right here by using letter R, rotating like this, and I click using the left mouse button. So now I have position animation plus rotation at once. Okay, so this dope sheet is the one that helps you to edit those keyframes to make them to what you want. Okay, so you can use different types, like you can use you can come back here and go to, instead you use the graph editor. So we are still editing the keyframes, but this time we are using the graph. Okay, so these are the different forms, and this button is almost everywhere, so you can find it here. You can change this view into whatever view you want. This button is almost anywhere. See it? Even yeah, it's here. Okay, so it depends on what you are selected, is going to show in this icon. So that's the animation, and that's also this button. that helps you switch between different views or different workspaces. Sorry, different panels. Those will be panels, because remember, these panels can also be like edited on your works depending on your space of the screen. Okay. So rendering for viewing your final renders, compositing to put out your final product. Remember, Blender also has that video editing feature. And lastly, for scripting, if you know Python, that's where you'll be typing your stuff and doing some cool stuff with your code. Okay, so that's like the interface and the viewport. Now, I'm not really sure. Are you still following Vasa?
Yes.
Great. Now, Joshua is gone forever. Not anyway. Cannot see him anyway. Guy doesn't have a microphone. Okay. So that's the selection. I'll show you how to select using the left click. I've showed you how to rotate. I've showed you how to pan and zoom frame select. Now, I haven't showed you this tool here. This tool is like the camera tool, which you are going to use when you want to render out. So this is what we are seeing in the view. So that is the animation that we are seeing in the view right now. That's what we can render out if you started rendering. So this camera helps you to see what is going to be rendered out. And this last button just helps you to go in perspective and orthographic mode. Now, the perspective or this orthographic projection or perspective, they will be like if you see those a big city and you want to see it like flat, you don't want to see big buildings, you want to see it on a straight line. This is what the view that the button that you'll be using. All right, so the next thing is going to be I think we have looked at the panels, so we start looking at these buttons here. We have looked at almost all this stuff here. Yeah, Windows, just another window of cinema of a Blender. So you have two windows and you can change this window into something else. 3D port, image viewer, UV editor, whatever you want. So you can have two of them if you have enough screen space. Okay, so screen sharing was paused because I messed up the whole thing. So now we already know how to animate in a Blender, because you know keyframes, okay, and you know the timeline and everything. So let me show you what these buttons will be doing. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
All right. So up here, if you set up here, this one is like called the outliner. The outlines the project things, the things in the project here, like the lamp, the camera, the tube. It's the project outliner. Okay, I've showed you the camera button here. Okay, so these ones, like this section, this whole section, this one like the tool, and it depends on what you have selected and what you are doing mostly. If you're modeling, it might be different. And this small camera icon is like the render place for your settings for the render. Okay, like the ambient occlusion, like the whole scene thing. If you want to change the render mode. All right, so Joshua said he can't hear us. He's already has some issues, but I think we shall be sharing with him the recording afterwards. Not so?
Yes.
Okay, so I was still about it's called the properties editor. You can call it the properties editor. And I started with the tools tab. This tools tab, but it depends on the tools that you are using and which mode you are in probably. So the next one is like the render tab, and it includes the settings for your render, how much motion blur in your animation, volumetrics like fogs, and also ambient occlusion for your render, and which render you are using, if you're using Cycles render or Workbench, or if you have an external render engine that you are using like Redshift or Octane. Next one is an icon like for printer, and this one is like the output, where you change the output for your render. Like this one is 1920 by 1080 pixels, with the perspective and the frame ratio, frames from the start to finish, which frames you want to render out, and also where you want to render your animation. So let's choose for our animation, let's go to with my disk and let's create a quick folder. So I'll call this one Blender classes. Open that folder and I'll accept. So depending on what I will choose here, if it is a format of PNG or it's a format of AVI JPEG. I thought I would find an MPEG. Here we have an MPEG. No, I'm not sure it's the MPEG 4 that I'm looking for, but it's probably the one. So if we see this H264, that's probably MP4 you are dealing with. Okay, so audio and all those settings for your output. That's the icon that looks like a printer. The next one is the icon that looks like images, and that's like the view, the layers. So here's one thing I didn't tell you. This one is called, the whole thing here is called a scene. So a scene can be like multiple boxes, and this one could be like a whole city here or a house. That could be one scene. And if you want another scene, just click on this icon and click on new. So right now we have two scenes. The other scene has our animation and this scene has nothing in it. You switch between the two scenes from here. So we go back to our scene here. And so just like we have scenes, you also have layers. And these layers can be used like for this texturing stuff, like compositing stuff. If you want to composite your whole animation right here, you can use layers by clicking here, create a new layer, and you switch between the layers here. So each layer can have like different materials and different passes. Okay, like one layer can have ambient occlusion, another one doesn't have. So you combine those layers and you do a whole composite. Okay, already know what composition means in 3D and visual effects. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, great. So the next one here is called the you can call it like the scene, and this one's that's why I brought in the scenes here, because this is where you can choose which camera is looking at which scene, so you can choose how you're going to render out all the scenes. The next one is the globe icon. It's like world properties, basically the whole world, or the world, your 3D world, how it's going to look like. For example, the background, which background do you want to put in the whole in your world, in your 3D world, and the color, and these other properties here. The next one is the object. Object, we call this the object tab, but it has all the object properties. For example, the location of your object right here on the x-axis, your location of your on the y, your object, location of your object on the z-axis, okay, and the rotation. Okay, so these options, the ones we accessed here for position, move, rotate, and scale, they are all here. So the good thing is you can scale this one on the axis that you want to get exactly what you are looking for. So just like that, we have turned our tube into a whole building. so, so other options here, look at those maybe. So the next one is modifiers. So modifiers can be like the bed modifiers we looked at in Cinema 4Ds, prime modifiers, and this one for curve, warping effects, fluid simulation, growth simulations, smoke, all that good stuff, like the particles. So if you start applying modifiers to this object, let me say, if I can find the bevel modifier, which brings up those bevels, then you can set the settings right here, how wide, and all that stuff. Okay. So that's the bevel modifier, and you can apply multiple modifiers. For example, which other modifier can I apply here? Probably they explode, but don't apply because it might need some physics, because most of the simulations will need some physics. We need to apply some other stuff. But that's the modifier tab. That's where you apply the modifiers. So the next one is the particles. So once you apply some physics on your object, like smoke, all those other particles, this way you'll be seeing the effects and you can stack them using this button. So the next one is the physics, and this is where you'll be applying your physics, like the rigid body, the fluids, the soft body, the collisions. Okay. The next one is the object constraints. If you want to tie an object to another, this is where you'll be coming, make the children and the parent objects, and these other constraints mostly used in rigging. So the next tab is the object data tab, to be including like the real data in this object, like the vertices. If you vertice groups, you can group the top vertices in one group, and you can group like the faces, different faces in one group. That's the data here, the object data properties. The next second last is the what's this one? So it's probably the materials tab. Probably, yes, the materials tab. So it's where you find all the properties of your materials for this object, and the colors and properties for the colors, like the subsurface scattering. For you already know what subsurface scattering means. I explained all that stuff. You still remember what subsurface scattering means?
Not really.
Okay, so if you are doing like a body, you see a body when it lights through your hand, you could probably see, if it's a lot of light, you could probably see through it. So you can see some light through your body if it's a hard light. That's what we call subsurface scattering. You can use that in like plants, yeah, mostly plants stuff, and yeah, also human body, because it absorbs the light. So the last one is for textures, because you know the difference between the materials and textures, right?
Yes.
All right, so the other objects or tabs that are not here, they only appear when we are selected. For example, if you select the light, we get this tab here for object, still the object data, but now it's showing like a bulb, because we have the light selected. So we have the settings for the light, the color, how intensive it is, its radius, and all that good stuff. That's the radius. And if you select the camera, you also get properties for the camera right here, like what type of camera, depth of field, and all those other camera settings. So the next thing is to render out our animation. I don't know if it has affected it was affected by, I think it was affected by our scale, because our keyframes are okay, our keyframes are no longer here. So it was probably affected by the scale that we applied, or maybe I used the controls somewhere. So I want us to render out a quick animation. Let's render out this tube going around the screen. So I'll select this tube. I'm going to use S for scale, and I'm going to use letter Z to scale it down on the Z axis up to like that. And I left click. All right, so I'm going to look through the camera by clicking on this button. And then I use letter G to grab. And I use letter Y to move on the X axis like this out of the camera. And I click, okay? So I'm going to use this button here. It is for auto keying. So again, I'm going to select and use G to grab. So I make sure I'm on the Y axis. I click, so I have a keyframe there. And then if I move up to, let's say 71 frames, and I grab again, and I use the Y axis again, G, Y, and I move through the screen like that. Left click, and we have our keyframe there. So we have position animation. You just click on this to scrub through your animation, or you just click on this button to watch your animation. Right, you can pause it by just clicking there. Also reduce from 250 to 100, probably 90 frames. So we have our very short animation. I want to add a rotation to that. So I'll just go back to the first frame, and I'll use R for rotation like that. And if I go here, I can use the rotation again like this. Okay, so let's play back and see what we have. So that's what we have so far. But you can select these keyframes and go to one of these modes that we have seen, one of these, maybe animation, or you can just go to this tab and this panel, and you convert it to a graph editor. And so if you select on this tube again, we have these keyframes, okay, and you can be able to edit these graphs like this to make it a smooth animation. So if you select those keyframes and you use the right click button, you can be able to get these options like the interpolation mode. So you can have things like bounce effect, elastic effect. Let's try the bounce effect and see what it does. So go back here and use the play button. So if you go back to the camera and go back to zero, play again. I think it's a bit smooth compared to what we had. Not so. Some smooth animation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think if you had like a car, a model of a car, that would be like a real animation going through the screen. So I think next maybe next week, is it next Friday, we'll look at a real animation of a real cartoon, because we won't have time to model this stuff, model a whole character. But I can probably show you how to animate a character, rigged one. You can get a rigged model, but that's probably how you animate in Blender, depending on what you want to animate. So right now you have a lot of power already. You can go on and do some kind of a revision through the whole interface. and then we look at a model next time, unless you have any questions.
For now, I don't have any questions.
Yeah, I think we have covered a lot. If you want me to send you the video, let me know. I can send you this video that we just recorded. Maybe you can go back and revise this stuff.
Okay.
All right, so thank you so much for joining the class. You have unfortunately not been able to have Joshua with us, but we will share the video with him, probably get something out. Oh, we almost forgot to render this animation. So just go to the camera output. You have 1980 by 10, 1920 by 1080. We choose the class, where I want to save the video. And then what else do we need to do? And then we need to go to render, and we go to render animation. The shortcut is F12 for rendering out your animation. So depending on the power of your machine, it will be showing you how much time it is estimating to take to render out your animation. Okay. So I will maybe see you next time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much.